that. Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to this elegantly titled webinar, Ugly Businesses Equals Beautiful Profits. So let me explain to you as we go along what that means. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is counterintuitive. It's the exact opposite of what you would expect. I think a lot of people who've never bought a business before think it's one thing, and then they do it and it's a completely different thing. So I'm going to tell you what the different thing is today. I'm also going to focus you on a sector of business acquisition, which is buying these ugly businesses. And this is actually my favorite type of business acquisition, and I will show you why it is and why I would buy what we call an ugly business rather than one that is already perfect. So what is today's webinar all about? It's also about making the most of the opportunity happening right now. It is quite clear that we are in a worldwide recession. Apparently, UK government borrowing is the highest in 300 years. It's chaos out there. It's absolute carnage in the business world. Now, you can have, there are two responses to that. You can either say, woe is me, the world is a very unfair place, and curl up in a corner and hope that it's all going to be over as soon as possible. And it won't be. This is going to be around for a while. So you could actually say, you know what, maybe there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity to build my existing business or get into business. There's an opportunity to save jobs. I mean, just since lockdown alone, we have saved hundreds of jobs in our existing business group by buying businesses which would have closed otherwise. Now, there is an opportunity there. I won't make out that I'm Mother Teresa and I'm doing all of this out of the goodness of my heart. There is a very clear financial opportunity for those people who step up and grasp it. And quite possibly this webinar will be the turning point for those people. I also want to inspire you to realize there's more to business than sitting behind a desk. When I chat with the clients who I work with to help buy businesses, the one thing they repeat to me, and they don't realize that they're all saying it, they say it to me at separate times, but I had the same conversation again and again, and they say, Jonathan, this is so much fun. It's so much more fun than just operating a business. Buying businesses and then selling businesses is way more fun than just sitting behind a desk dealing with day-to-day problems. I also want to motivate you to take action. I want you to do something as a result of this webinar. And I want you to make a yes-no decision at the end. Okay, so this is the deal. We're making a deal right now. And we'll do a virtual handshake on the deal. So the deal is this: you make a decision. And the decision is, this is something that you run with and you make happen in 2021, or something you don't. I'm fine if you don't, but if you do, let's do something about it. And if you don't, well, at least you had a look. But I want you to do something. There's nothing worse than putting things off. There's nothing worse than procrastination. If I look at everything in my life that I have procrastinated over and eventually done it, I've always thought to myself, oh, well, that was easier than I thought it was going to be, or that took less time than I thought it was going to take, or in actual fact, I wish I'd made that decision months earlier. And I want today to be the first step towards buying a business. I guess that some of you on the webinar, because there's enough people on the webinar for some of you to have bought a business previously, which is absolutely wonderful. I want today to stimulate your desire to do it again and again and again. And for some of you, you've never bought a business before. Maybe you're a little nervous about what could go wrong. Well, during the webinar today, I'm going to tell you all of the things that people worry about when it comes to buying a business, and I will do what I can to alleviate those anxieties so that you can make an informed decision. Now, I can tell from some of the messages people were sending me before we started that you've either been in one of my webinars before, you've read my book, you've listened to my podcast, you are a subscriber on my YouTube channel. But some of you, you found this by accident. Maybe someone recommended it. I don't know how, but you don't know anything about me. So I'm going to give you the quick one slide introduction. I can absolutely promise you, I never show people pictures of me as a child. There are no hard luck stories, none of that. But I need you to just realize why I'm talking to you about the subject that I'm talking to you about today. When I was 27 years old, I sold a publishing business. It was called Achievement UK. I sold it to Marcus Bond Associates, and I made more money on that Friday afternoon than I had ever made from the previous 2.5 years of running the business. Let me just say that again slightly differently. I'd run the business, owned the business for 2.5 years. The day I sold it, I made more money than the previous 2.5 years combined, and my eyes were opened. Suddenly, I realized that actually being someone who operated a business wasn't really where it's at. Being someone who can buy and sell businesses, that is the turning point. And then I grew a group of companies, a business, by acquisition, which means by buying other businesses. And I sold to PE, that means private equity, in 2007. And it was a decent sized deal. It was a multi-million-pound deal. I guess I could have just not done anything for quite a while after that and just lived off that money, but that isn't me. I like to work. I like to do things. I like to be active. So I think it was about 6 months, and then I was back at it again. I've written 10 books on business. I went through my bookshelves behind me, and I picked them out. These are the books that I've written. This was 16 years ago. Called Sack Your Boss. This was the second edition that went into the shops, different publisher. Then that was 2007. That was 2008. I wrote that one in 2009. You see, I was doing one a year. 2010, had a break for a couple of years. 2012, 2013, had a break for a few years. 2017, how to buy and sell great businesses. That one was last year, business buying strategies. That's probably the most popular one. And this one only came out at the beginning of this year, but I've forgotten to promote it. So hardly anyone's got a copy of that. Buying a Business, 101 Tough Questions Answered. It's a great book, though. So I've been around a while. I'm not new to this. And over the years, I've bought and sold from private equity and trade. So I've actually bought businesses from private equity firms. I've sold businesses to private equity firms. I bought businesses from other business owners, and I've sold businesses to other business owners. Currently growing a group by acquisition. I've bought 15 businesses in the last 15 months. But here's the thing I want to draw to your attention here. 10 of those were bought since lockdown. So 10 of those were bought since April of 2020. And we have 9 more getting ready to complete before Christmas. I have my morning briefing with my guys, my team, and we're just pushing the other side. I mean, all of them. Just pushing. Suddenly everyone's going to do some work and get it all done before Christmas. So that will jump up to 24 businesses in the group. I also have a little sideline. It's something I do for 1 day a week. I help other people who are business minded buy businesses. It's a £12,000 plus VAT program. It's called my private client program. And you may wonder, am I doing this free webinar on a Friday morning out of the goodness of my heart, or do I actually have a cold, hard commercial reason for doing this webinar? Well, I don't want to disappoint you. So I do have a very commercial reason for doing this webinar, because at the end of it, I want to tell you about something I'm doing in a week's time. It doesn't cost £12,000. It costs a few £100s. But if you're serious about buying a business in 2021, then you'll want to be doing that. I believe anyone who's interested can find a few £100, but I'll tell you about that later on after we've done all of the stuff I want to talk about today. So I learned this whole business buying thing the hard way. I did it by trial and error. I wasted a lot of money. I made mistakes. I read every book, went on every course, found out everything I could about buying it. But I discovered that my methodology, the way I was doing things, I preferred, because a lot of people who just written these books had just written books. And I always found that very disappointing when you meet the author of a book and you realize that they're nothing like you imagined, and they've just written a book. They've never actually done it themselves. So everything that we talk about today, I can assure you will have no jargon, no accountancy speak, and no legal speak. So today I'm going to simplify the process and help you understand exactly what's involved in buying a business. But this is also quite important. I'm going to help you get out of your own way. I think the one thing that stands between people wanting to buy a business and actually doing it typically is themselves. I mean, the skills can be learned, the skills can be acquired. Yeah, I can help you with that. You know, the attitude can be developed. No problem with that. We can all do that. But you know what? At the end of the day, if you're going to procrastinate forever about whether you're going to get started, you probably aren't the best person to buy a business, to be fair, because you've got to move really, really fast. When we find a business that we like, we make a decision within 24 hours. And the idea always is to complete the deal within 6 weeks. I was talking to a bank about our approach, Oak North Bank. Is a challenger bank. It's not a high street bank. I was talking to them about this 2 days ago on Wednesday, and they were amazed. They said, we talk to entrepreneurs all the time who are buying businesses because they fund a lot of acquisitions, and they spend 6 months to buy a business. And I said, no, we do it in 6 weeks because we know what we're doing and we have a process. And he said, can you come in and teach when we get our entrepreneurs together, our clients together? Can you come in and teach them? I said, of course I'll teach them, because see, most people don't realize that you can do things quickly if you have a process. So everything I do is process driven. Here is the thing that I want to, when we talk about ugly businesses and beautiful profits, I want you to get over a mental hurdle that some people have. When they go out looking for a business to buy, they say, no, that one's not right, and that one's not right, and this isn't right, because they're looking for a perfect business. They're looking for a perfect business, perfect location, perfect size, perfect customers, perfect credit control, perfect marketing, looking for perfect. You know what? You're going to be looking for a very long time if you look for the perfect business to buy. I say to you, what you should be doing is looking for the imperfect ones that you can improve. Look for the ones that aren't perfect. Look for ones that you can improve. And there are various reasons for that. I'll tell you in a moment. You see, the problem with perfect businesses is that they demand higher values. The owners typically know that the value is high. They have advisors who raise the price because they say this business is absolutely perfect. The owner, therefore, has very high expectations of value. It's harder to negotiate with the owner of a perfect business. They can hold out always for a better deal, a better offer. And also, there's no way to add value. And I like to buy businesses where I can add value. I need to be able to add value because that value multiplies the value of the business rapidly. So basically, I don't have to buy that value. I can build that value and create that value myself. But when we compare perfect businesses to ugly businesses, well, it's a completely different kettle of fish. Often the value of an ugly business is a business that's been eroded by poor management. So the value of the business has been eroded over time by poor management. And poor management is quite often a result of people losing interest in the business that they own. And that interest can be lost as a result of age and ill health. And the third piece of the mix happening right now is coronavirus. So as a result of coronavirus, ill health, and age, typically the value of the business has been eroded. Now, here's the key thing. The value of the business needs to have been eroded temporarily, because don't forget, when we buy this business, we're buying because we see potential and we want the transition from where the business is now to where we want the business to be as quick as possible. Quite often, the owners of these ugly businesses live in the past. So they do things the old-fashioned way. They're very paper orientated. They're never really businesses that are particularly good online. And quite frankly, I'm not blaming anyone. I mean, I can completely get that. If you've got two owners in their 70s, are they really likely to have the best online shop you could imagine? Well, probably not. There's always going to be exceptions, but probably not. And also, ugly businesses have untapped potential. Now, remember, when you're buying a business, you're not going to pay for that potential. Some owners like to make out that the business has an incredible potential and we're putting a value on that. No, 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 no. If you want to maximize that potential and sell it to me with that potential already optimized, then I'll pay for it. But if I'm going to be the one doing all the work, absolutely not. I'm not paying for something that hasn't happened, might never happen. And if it does happen, it's down to me to make it happen. Why would I pay for that? Crazy. But quite often when sellers talk about potential in the business, they know that the business has been is of a lower value because it's ugly. It's an ugly business. So they have to talk about the beauty that could happen under your ownership. Never under theirs, always under yours. Now, the key to transforming an ugly business is you've got to move quickly because it can't remain ugly for too long. You've got to use technology so there's less reliance on people. And again, this ties in very well with typically the owner of an ugly business is an older owner. So we need to use technology. And this can be technology around point of sale, around stock control. This can be technology around invoicing. This can be technology around collecting. Let me give you an example of all the businesses that I'm buying at the moment. We're moving all of the customers onto paying by direct debit, as opposed to transferring money to the companies whenever they feel like it. So we want to also reduce reliance on people. Quite often, businesses that have this ugly factor to them have an awful lot of people doing a job that, quite frankly, they could replace with technology. So, for example, in one, there were 5 people in the finance department, and I reduced that down to a part-time bookkeeper. So one part-time bookkeeper did everything that 5 people could do. So these ugly businesses typically are overstaffed, and everyone's protecting their job and protecting each other's job. We also want to streamline the back office. This is really, really important. So anything that happens behind the scenes needs to be streamlined. And also, ugly businesses typically have poor marketing, especially online marketing. And you know something, if marketing isn't your thing, just find someone who can do this for you. So much of this, I just don't do myself. I don't sort out the finance systems. I don't sort out the marketing. I have other people do that for me. And quite often, ugly businesses have a product and service range that is stuck in the past. So it's typically they haven't responded to the requirements of what a modern purchaser wants, whether it's a consumer or a business purchaser. And the way to find out what could be done and what could be sold is to ask the younger staff working in the business, if you were the boss of this business, what would you be doing? What would you be saying? What do customers, or what do potential customers phone and ask for that you always have to say you don't do? So reinvigorating the product range is a very fast turnaround for an ugly business. So why on earth would we even think about buying these ugly businesses? How do we benefit from ugly businesses? Well, we use something called the buy and build strategy. Now, you can go and buy one business, and I have plenty of people come off my programs and just buy one business and that's it. They have no ambition beyond that single business that they purchase. But that single business could be a multi-million-pound acquisition. It could double the size of their existing business, triple the size even in some cases. And quite frankly, they're happy with that. That's what they set out to do. But then I have other clients, and I would say this is probably the majority, who are operating this buy and build strategy. And the buy and build strategy, sometimes called a roll up, although that's more of an American phrase. The buy and build strategy is a very sound way of adding value very quickly. So let me just explain to you the principles of this. So smaller businesses can be bought for low multiples. Let me explain what that means. Quite often when we, well, always actually, when we buy a business, the amount that we agree to pay will be a multiple of either net profit or EBITDA, which is earnings before profit. Now, it's always going to be a multiple because you'll always be able to take the profit that the business makes and relate it to the purchase price. And the purchase price is always going to be a multiple of that net profit. Now, just to give you a little tip, and I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but when I help people buy businesses, we try and avoid multiple valuations. There are far smarter ways of getting to a valuation. But the bottom line is that whatever you pay for the business, it will always be a multiple of profit. So smaller businesses command smaller multiples. So you could actually buy a business for a percentage of profit that is actually an amount equivalent to 0.5, half a year's profit. So let's say the business makes £500,000 profit. Well, you could buy that business for as little as £250,000, the equivalent of half a year's profit, simply because it's an ugly business and it's typically a smaller, ugly business. You would find it very unusual to pay more than 3 times. In recent months, I've paid as low as 0.25 times, so a quarter of annual profits, never more than 3 times. Now, that's the first principle. The second principle is this. Larger businesses are worth more. They can be sold for higher multiples. So I just interviewed someone for my podcast yesterday who does this with coffee shops and local restaurants. So you can sell a group of coffee shops, for example, and a group would be more than 10 for the equivalent of 15 times profit. All right, but you'd never be able to do that if it was just one coffee shop. You don't do it with 10 coffee shops. So these larger businesses are just worth more because they've proven that they can scale and they've proven that they can make profit at a higher level. And quite frankly, that's a far better investment for any buyer. Now, this is the next principle. The next principle is that there are thousands of smaller businesses. Thousands of them. Whichever country in the world you're in, it makes no difference to me where you are. There are thousands of small businesses. Now, let me just translate that for you in case you aren't following the same thought process I am. That means there are thousands of opportunities. Thousands of opportunities is very, very good because you'll always find some good ones. Now, the large groups in any sector, the large dentistry groups, the large coffee shop groups, the large garden center, whatever, you pick a sector, it makes no difference what it is. They only want to buy mid-sized groups, but they don't want to buy single operators because it's just too much hassle buying a single operator. They may as well buy, let's use the coffee shops example because I've used it already. Instead of buying one coffee shop, they're not going to be interested in that. They want to buy someone who's already got 10. One deal, one transaction, bang, we've got 10 more in our chain. We were not going to go and do 10 separate deals. We want to buy a mid-sized group. So this is your plan. If you're going to follow this buy and build strategy, you buy the single operators and you become a mid-sized group. So you create a mid-sized group. So you basically go and do the legwork, finding these single operators, and there's plenty of them in any sector, in any country in the world. You put them together and become a mid-sized group. And then you sell that to the larger group. And then you do my favorite expression, which is rinse and repeat. So you just go and do it again in a different sector. So I've got people who are buying print companies doing this. I've got people buying, oh my goodness, care homes, domiciliary care, pest control, advertising type businesses, online banner printing, all of the, you name it, there's always going to be someone doing it. So this is why the buy and build strategy is so, so good. So let me just put this into, say in a different way to you. You buy at one price these ugly businesses, you make them beautiful and part of a larger group because you're buying several of them and you're sticking them together. You get an overall uplift in value and then you sell. And here's the bit that I think, well, I hope you find this motivating. I certainly do. And if I could see your faces, maybe I would see this light bulb coming on in your eyes. Is that what I'm describing to you here is a 36-month project. This isn't something you have to do for 5, 10, 15, 20 years to get a result. This is a 36-month project. You start now, and in 36 months' time, you'll be selling your group or whatever it is to someone else and cashing the check. So it's not looking ahead 5, 10, 15 years because, it depends how old you are, but maybe, you're in your 50s or your 60s and you might think, I don't want to be doing this for another 20 years. But no, just do it for 36 months. 3 birthdays. That's all it takes, 3 birthdays. But why would you buy a business rather than starting something from scratch? Well, quite clearly, if you already own a business, it's the fastest way to make your business more profitable. Just buy another business and bingo, you're more profitable overnight. Now, if you want to get into business, and I guess some people on the webinar today are business minded, but don't currently own a business, then you can just go and buy something, and that's faster and easier and way more cost effective than spending 3 years trying to turn a profit, as most new businesses do. You see, when you buy a business, you get instant products and services, instant marketing, instant financial systems, and really, really importantly, you get instant cash flow. So you know from the day you buy it how much money you're going to make every month. Now, if you were really commercially minded, and I guess some of you are, then when you look at the cash flow of the business that you're buying, the question that's going to be going through your mind is, that's mine. How much of that can I take out every month? And the more cash flow there is, and cash flow, by the way, is free cash flow is the cash left after you've paid all expenses, i.e. profit, that's yours to take out. Do you see how good this is? So you can actually predict what your income is going to be. See, if you're just looking at your existing business now and say 2021 is going to be an amazing year. Well, quite frankly, that's what we all said at the beginning of this year, right? I certainly did. Then look what happened. Everything changes. But if you start buying businesses, you start to be able to predict how much money you're going to make because you know how much money the business is making right now. Now, let's be really, really clear, because when I do Q&A later, people always ask me the same questions. They say, oh, I'm in, I know that we've got people from South Africa and New Zealand and Canada on the webinar today. Can I do it in my country? Yes, you can. Can I do it in this sector, that sector, this sector I've just come across, this sector that I work in right now? Yeah, any sector. Everything that I talk about can be used in any sector, in any country. You see, there are no limits, except, of course, the limits that we talked about earlier, which are the limits that you place upon yourself, which is the procrastination and trying to justify why not to do anything, which is an interesting approach to life. Justify why I'm not going to do anything, and here's my justification. Odd, but some people do it. So these are the things that go through people's minds to stop them doing any of this. And I want to tackle each of these, because I think that if you've got these things in your head, you completely misunderstood the business buying game. And if you misunderstood the business buying game, you might be missing out on an opportunity to do something amazing because you just got misconceptions. So the first misconception is, I don't have any savings and I can't get credit. I hear this all the time. People say, well, I want to buy a business. I haven't got any money. I'll tackle that one in a minute. Where do I find a business to buy? I mean, is it difficult to find a business to buy? I'll tackle that one for you. How do I know if it's the right business to buy? I have a full-time job or a full-time business. How will I find the time? Hear that one a lot. And what if I buy a business and it goes wrong? This is that fear of failure, fear of risk. Well, don't worry. I get it. I understand it. I'm going to show you why you needn't be concerned about any of these things. So here's the first one. People say, I don't have any savings and I can't get credit. Huge misconception. The reason why it's a huge misconception is this. You think that you need lots of money in the bank to buy a business because you've just assumed it's a little bit like buying a house where you've got to save up a big deposit. And then once you've got your deposit, you go and get the rest of the money from the bank, but you've got poor credit. So you've got to save the money. That could take forever, and you've got poor credit. Well, what if I told you that all the businesses I bought this year, 10 so far, it'll be 19 by Christmas. Watch out on LinkedIn. You'll see the announcement. All of those businesses didn't require me to dip into my savings. I believe that capital should be preserved. It's not for spending. And it didn't require me to go and borrow money, and my credit rating and everything is irrelevant to this, completely irrelevant. Now, just think about that for a moment. That means that you could buy a business without having that deposit, like buying a house, and without having to borrow money from a bank, like buying a house. In fact, you could buy a business without using any of your own money at all and without borrowing money from a bank. You see, 90% of my clients don't have personal funds and didn't borrow to buy a business. There are many ways to buy a business without using your own money. For example, you can use, and I'm not going to go through these in detail, but I want to just give you a couple of examples. You can do what's called a leveraged buyout. You can refinance the assets in the business. That is the staple of private equity. I mean, that is the that is the main principle of private equity. You can use the cash in the bank to buy the business. You can use something called vendor financing to buy the business. There are so many ways of doing this. So let's just get that one out of your head. It doesn't matter if you haven't got any money. It doesn't matter if you've got bad credit, because those aren't the principles that we're using to acquire. The next question that people often ask is, how easy is it to find a business? Well, this is something that we call deal flow. And the deal flow is how many inquiries you get from people who want to sell. I can absolutely assure you that when you know how to generate deal flow, this will be something that you will never, ever worry about. And I'm going to give you one method in about 10 minutes time that I use to generate all of my deal flow. And then people say, how do I know if it's the right business to buy? Now, I get that, because you don't want to buy the wrong business. You don't want to buy a business that looks good on paper but isn't in reality. You don't want to buy a problem. No one wants to buy a problem. So I use what I call my 5-star criteria, and the 5-star criteria include the motivation of the seller, include the simplicity of the deal, include various factors, 5 things in fact. And I measure every deal, and so do my clients, against those 5 criteria, because if it doesn't meet all 5 of the 5 criteria, then quite frankly, I'm going to pass. Now, the other thing to really know about whether it's the right business to buy is that the asking price for the business, how much the seller wants for it, is less than the value to you. Now, I have a general principle, and I stick to these principles, is that I am never going to overpay for something. And if I can't buy it at the price that I want to buy it at, then I don't buy it at all. Because I've got good deal flow, I can just move on to the next one. And then also, we always look at businesses that are ugly, and someone else can make it beautiful for you. Now, this is a new principle I just want to introduce to you here. It's not you making the ugly business beautiful. It's other people. You see, when you buy a business, you don't buy a job. You actually are buying a business that someone else can run for you. That's very, very important, which brings us on to our next point, which is, I have a full-time job or a full-time business. How will I find the time to buy a business? You see, this is the situation that 90% of my clients are in. It's never stopped them from buying a business. The key is that someone else runs the business for you, either someone that you recruit to run the business for you, or someone who's already in the business and is knowledgeable about the business. They become the new manager of that business when the seller leaves, because they've sold, they're going. Okay. So when you stop thinking that buying a business is going to create more work for you, suddenly it becomes more accessible because someone else is going to be doing the work, not you. But then also, I've got another secret. It's my deal team. And these are the people that I utilize to do 80% of the work of buying a business for me. And I say this in a slightly guilty way because they do 80% of the work, but I take 100% of the credit. um, and I need to get over that guilt, I think. But this should be a relief to you that other people can do 80% of the work, but you take 100% of the credit. The 20% that you do, by the way, is finding the deal and negotiating the deal. And don't worry if that baffles you, because all of this can be learned. So the people on my deal team include all the people that you would expect. And it's actually a longer list than that. But by having a really expert deal team, I don't have to do all this work myself. Now, the fear of risk and the fear of failure, I completely understand. What if I buy a business and it goes wrong? I'm nervous of any personal risk. And quite frankly, who wants personal risk? No one wants personal risk. The older you get, the less personal risk you want. And I'm completely with you on that. So how do we make sure that we aren't dropping ourselves in it? Well, you need to carefully evaluate the business that you want to buy. I think that's really, really important. You need to carefully evaluate the business that you want to buy. Measure it against, for example, my 5-star formula. You need to do adequate due diligence so that you know what you're buying. It is true that some businesses are just crazy businesses and you want to avoid them. So you need to be able to make this distinction between good businesses to buy and bad businesses to buy. You then want to protect yourself with the correct corporate structure. Now, I'm not going to go into this in detail today because I spend considerable time teaching this on the Fast Track program. But you need to have a holding structure, SPV structure, because without that, you are opening yourself up to risk. And also, you want to avoid personal guarantees or insure against them. And many people don't realize you can actually insure against personal guarantees. You may want to just avoid them altogether. I've got like half a dozen different ways of avoiding personal guarantees. Actually, can I just tell you something? This is the sort of, what I'm about to say is the sort of thing I say to my clients on the Fast Track program. But it happened last night. I think this is just the funniest thing, and I've got to share this with you. So we're buying a business in Preston. We already own one in Preston. When I say we, I own 90% of the business. I have a minority shareholder. So that's the we I keep talking about. And she was up in Preston, and she went to meet the owner of the business because we just want to get all this over the line before Christmas. And he's actually the landlord as well. And she'd been there for a meal on Saturday, and she went back there again, and again he brought out all this food and insisted that she sat down with the family. There was like 7 of them, the whole family sitting together on Saturday. She's very committed. She'll do anything to get the deal done. And he said to her, the thing is, he said, we want a personal guarantee on the lease. And she said to him, she said, what do you mean personal guarantee? You've been telling me that I'm like a daughter to you. Would you ask your own children for a personal guarantee? And he said, well, actually, come to think of it, no, I wouldn't. And he went, well, there you go. No, and no personal guarantee. And I just think that's absolutely brilliant. Now, you can't use that technique all the time, but it just goes to show when you've got the rapport with the seller, then negotiation becomes an awful lot easier. So I hope you appreciated that. So let me go through the business buying process with you. It's 20 steps. And I want to go through these 20 steps so that you can see the process from end to end. So you get like a helicopter view, as corporate speak, but we get the helicopter view of the process. So first of all, I think it's really important to get the first step nailed, which is decide on the type of business you want to buy. Now, I've got to say, this is a stumbling block for 80% of people. 80% of people say, Jonathan, I want to buy a business, but I don't know what type of business to buy. Don't worry, you're in the majority. And if you do decide to do my Zoom program in a week or so's time, then this is what we spend time doing on the very first session, because sometimes people get the cart before the horse here, and they say, well, I can only come on the program when I know what type of businesses to buy. No, don't worry. You're in the majority. 80% of people don't know what type of business to buy. One of the points of the program is to help you decide on the strategy. So getting that strategy right is something that is teachable, because there is a process, a thought process to go through to find the right business to buy. You then need to approach business owners in that sector. Now, I'm going to give you in a minute, in about 5 minutes, I'm going to give you my methodology for generating these inbound inquiries. And those inbound inquiries are in the form of phone calls and emails from owners who want to sell. So they come to you. You don't go to them. They come to you. You then have an exploratory conversation on the phone. Really, really important that you know what to say, because you could blow it at this point. If you say the wrong thing, say something stupid, that could be the end of the deal before you've even started. And then you need to, after that phone call, receive and review some very basic information about the company. You do not have to be an accountant to understand this. If you use an accountant, you've got an accountant on your deal team, they might look at this for you. You can sort of sub it out to them if you haven't got the time. That's a good way of leveraging their skill set. You then need to work out what the business is worth to you. And I've got a very simple formula for this. What is the business worth to you? And the reason I say worth to you rather than what is the business worth is very, very important. And I hope you're tuned into what the difference is. You see, what the business is worth, there isn't like a little black book of business values. It's what the business is worth to you, because what the business is worth to me could be different to what the business is worth to you. They're different to what the business is worth to the next person. Everyone has a different idea of value. You see, if I know that I can buy this business for X, but it has a value of 3 or 4 or 5X as soon as I put it into my group, then that is going to dictate my value of the business. So this is a very different approach to valuation than a mathematical, let's look at the accounts. Now, the accounts are important, but we've also got to understand what the value is to us personally. Then we're going to have a Zoom meeting. By the way, you can buy a business remotely. You don't have to be in the same country. You don't have to be in the same town. You don't have to go and meet people. So if you're conscious of not wanting to do that, you can buy just about every business. Well, during all the business we bought during lockdown, we didn't obviously meet anyone. That's changed a little bit now, quite clearly. Also, always start from the position of not using your own money and not borrowing money. So every deal that we do, we say, okay, we're not going to borrow money, and we don't want to use our own money. How do we fund this? How do we put together a deal that works? So that's the thought process. Now, if we can put together a deal and we want to buy the business, we put this all into what we call a heads of terms agreement, which is a very simple document. You don't need a lawyer for that. And then we do some very initial low-cost financial due diligence. Now, your accountant can do that for you. If you've got a head for numbers, you can do that. Very, very simple, very, very straightforward. And then we're going to decide on the type of acquisition we're going to do. Are we going to acquire the assets of this business? Are we going to acquire the shares? Or are we going to do what's called a pre-pack, where you put it through an administration? Now, out of the 9 that I've got happening between now and Christmas, like 20 working days to go, 1 is a pre-pack, 1 is a share purchase, and 7 are asset purchases, just to give you an idea of the current split. Then you instruct lawyers to send the sale and purchase agreement, and you continue any due diligence in parallel. Now, remember that your deal structure should protect you from overpaying. I'm all for doing something when we put together this deal that protects us from paying a penny more than the business is worth to us. And then our corporate structure protects us. So we use an SPV to make the acquisition. Someone was messaging me on LinkedIn the other day saying, if I come on the fast track, do I learn how to do this? Because I'm about to buy a business. Do I buy it in my personal name? No, you don't. Never, never do that. You need to focus on the completion date. We've got a whole bunch where the completion date is now the 24th of December. Congratulations, you've now bought a business. Complete the takeover, look for your next target company, rinse and repeat, sell your group, and retire. And maybe retire for 6 months and then do it again. So there's your 20 steps. So what you do, if you decide to go on this journey with me, you look at where you are in those 20 steps and say, this is where I am. I just need to, I'm at step 14. I need to get up to step step 19, rinse and repeat, go back to the beginning, do it again, go back to the beginning, do it again. And when I've got a group of sufficient size that I can sell for an amount of money that we would consider to be life-changing, then you sell. And most people sell, take 6 months off and go and do it in another sector. Now, that all sounds incredibly exciting and incredibly inspiring. However, what could stand in your way? Well, three things. And I've done this. I've worked with enough people now in helping them buy businesses to really understand what could stand in their way. So number one is fear of the unknown. You've never done it before. You don't want to get it wrong. Completely understand. Number two is confidence. People say, I'm not sure if I've got the confidence to buy a business, and I get that. And in a moment, I'll show you how to increase your confidence. And number three is just procrastination. Oh, I'll do it next year. I'll do it the year after. I'll do it the year after. Well, we all procrastinate a little bit. I get that. I do. Everyone does. But if you constantly put it off, you'll never do it. And quite frankly, if you're going to be buying businesses, you need to overcome that procrastination. It's always helpful if you've got someone to bounce ideas off and say, look, I'm looking at this business. Is this a good business to buy? But you know something? Don't let procrastination kill the opportunity. So there are 4 quadrants to being successful at doing this. And then I want to give you a case study of an ugly business that I bought, made it beautiful, and sold it for those beautiful profits. So first of all, you need to have sound knowledge. You need to have sound knowledge of what you're doing. It really worries me when people say, Jonathan, I've watched your YouTube channel or I've listened to your podcast and I know what I'm doing. Thank you very much. I don't need your help. I'm going to go and buy a business. And it's like, oh my goodness. That's like going to the dentist and saying, and the dentist saying, well, we need to have a little bit of root canal. Not usually my thing, but I did listen to a podcast about it and I watched a very helpful YouTube video. So you know something, I think I'm up for the challenge. Open your mouth. So a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing. You really need to know what you're doing. Now, this will help your confidence level because when you know what you're doing, then you can speak confidently. And when I'm in email correspondence with clients about deals that they've got going on, I'm proud of them because I can see a transformation where they are confidently pushing back on an owner and saying, no, that's not how we're going to do it. Sometimes with the owner's solicitor, they're saying, no, that's not how the deal is going to work for us. We're going to do it like this. We're going to do it like that. Okay. So the confidence comes from knowing that you know what you talk about. The deal team is really, really important because they do 80% of the heavy lifting. Now, I told you that I tell you how I get my deal flow, my flow of inquiries. Well, I do something that people might think is a little bit old fashioned. You might look at this and say, you know what, that's kind of just old fashioned, Jonathan. Well, I'll tell you what it is. But the thing is, it works. And that's the most important thing. If it didn't work, I wouldn't do it. All of my clients do this. All of them. Even the ones who start off a little bit resistant saying, oh, well, yeah, I'm not sure if that's going to work for me. It works for everyone else. It'll work for you as well. And then they do it and they go, oh, yeah. And I go, I told you so. So this is how I do it. I identify businesses in the sector that I'm interested in, and I compile a list. And when I say a list, I mean all the businesses in that sector. It can be thousands and thousands of businesses in that sector. And then I narrow it down to businesses that are within a reasonable geography of where I am. And I just feel that if you're going to start anywhere, you might as well, if you live in London, buy a business, within 50 miles, don't go, why would you go and buy a business in Scotland as your first business? So the first one, actually, having said that, I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite here because just about every business I own at the moment is like 4 hours drive away. But to be fair, that could actually be a good thing because it stops me going to interfere because I can't pop in and say hello. They operate a lot better when I'm not there. I just cause chaos when I visit. So I get this list of people and I send them a letter. Now I have got a perfectly honed, perfectly crafted letter, which gets the right response. And let me tell you what the right response is. The right response is they pick up the phone or email and they say, Jonathan, I'm interested in selling. Can I have a chat, please? That is the perfect response. And I'm going to give you some examples in a minute of people in very different sectors who've used my letter to generate hundreds of inbound inquiries. I've generated over 345 inbound inquiries from people who want to sell their business just in the last 12 months alone. So these are our 4 quadrants: the knowledge, the confidence, the deal team, the deal flow. Now, if you miss out one of these, you're going to struggle. This is a 4-legged table. If you take away one of the legs, then the table will start to topple. You need all 4 legs there. The question I get asked a lot is it really possible to buy a business for £1? Now, the truth of the matter is, if you buy a business for £1, it's going to be an ugly business, which is fine. That's okay if you're up for the challenge. And there is always going to be a degree of challenge. So I want to tell you about an ugly business that I bought for £1. My £1 investment bought me a business doing 4.75 million of revenue per annum. Now, the first question to ask yourself is if you started a business from scratch, how long would it take you to get to nearly 5 million of annual revenue? Well, it would take a few years. You know, it depends what sector you're in, of course, but it's not going to be overnight. This was overnight. So with my £1 investment, I immediately had a business doing £5 million of annual revenue. But there was a catch. The catch was it was an ugly business. And the catch was it was so ugly, it was making a £300,000 a year loss. Now, here's the thing. You never buy a business that's making a loss unless you know, number one, why it's making a loss, and number two, how to fix it. Otherwise, you're just buying a headache. And you don't want to buy a headache. Who wants to buy a headache? No one does. Now, the second reason why it was an ugly business was that the balance sheet, just before I bought it, was negative to the tune of 20 million. Now, you might think, Jonathan, why on earth would you buy a business with a balance sheet that's negative 20 million? Let me tell you how that 20 million, or where that 20 million came from. Now, the owners were a private equity firm, and they bought this business 5 years earlier for 15 million pounds. And it is very typical to put that into the balance sheet as a debt, and then it accrues interest, and that 15 million and turned into 20 million over the 5 years. Now, they paid 15 million pounds for this, and I was buying it for £1. Now, we got they wrote off the debt because I wasn't going to buy it and owe them 20 million. Of course I wasn't. I'm a little crazy, but not that crazy. So really, I'm buying a business for £1 that makes a £300,000 a year loss, but I knew how to fix it. I knew what the problem was. I knew how to fix it. Now, these guys had paid 15 million pounds for it. So if they paid 15 million pounds for it and I'm buying it for £1, I consider that to be a bargain. Did the deal in 12 weeks. Should have taken shorter time. I like to do deals faster, but these private equity people always make it more complicated than it needs to be. But because I knew what the problem was, it took me 6 months to turn the loss into a profit. So after 6 months, the loss became a profit. I didn't do the hard work myself. I had a manager in there. During my period of ownership of this business, I only visited the office 9 times, which I think is pretty good. Most business owners visit their office 9 times in 9 days. Okay, this was 9 times in less about 11 months. Okay. It took me 12 weeks to sell the business. I didn't use a business broker. I did it myself. I used the same methodology I use for finding businesses to sell the business. And I sold it for a very strong 7-figure cash sum 11 months after buying it. So I bought it on May the 3rd 1 year. I sold it March the 24th the following year. At 10 o'clock we deal completed 10 o'clock in the evening. I was in a restaurant in Putney in southwest London. News came through, we'd all completed, and that was an 11-month journey. Now, 11-month journey from a £1 investment to a very tidy 7-figure sum, that's not bad. And I give you this case study to just show you what happens when you find an ugly business. You know what to do. You've got the deal team, you've got the knowledge, you've got the deal flow, you've got the confidence, what you can do to turn that ugly business into a business that you can sell for beautiful profits. So is this something that you would find next week? Would you find a deal like this next week? Realistically, the answer is no. Would you find this deal? Would this be the first business that you buy? Probably not. Would it be the second business that you buy? Well, maybe not. Depends what your starting point is, really. But is this a business that you could buy if you had the deal flow, you knew what to do, you had the deal team on side, and you could do this in the next year or so? Oh, absolutely. Because the methodology that I use to acquire this business and turn it around, you can learn. You know, it's not something that is unachievable to anyone apart from me. I just followed my process. I followed my process and I got the result. Now, I'm very conscious when I'm saying things like this, people start to think, well, you know what, Jonathan, it's all very well for you to say this. You first sold a business 21 years ago. You've got a little bit of experience under your belt, but I don't have that level of experience. I'm new to this. I'm a newbie. Well, you know something. I want to show you some people who've been doing exactly the same thing as me, using my process, but being very, very successful. So this is Peter. Peter is based in France. He's bought 9 businesses in the UK, so which goes to prove that you don't need to be physically close to the business that you're buying. You can buy businesses in different areas. He's bought 9 businesses in 2020. Totaling 20 million of annual revenue. So he's gone from zero to hero in 2020, 9 businesses, 20 million of annual revenue. Peter is 67. He's got the energy and the enthusiasm of someone 30 years younger, a great example to us all. This is Daniel, his first acquisition, 3 million revenue, 400,000 pound profit engineering company, no cash invested whatsoever. He used one of the financing methods that I hinted at earlier on. So let's just think about this. He went from not owning a business to owning a 3 million pound a year engineering company, making 400,000 pounds a year profit. That's his, by the way. The profit is his. It's his company. The profit is his. And it didn't cost him any of his own money. Now, I think that's pretty damn good. This is Perry. Perry has done 2 multi-million pound acquisitions in the last 12 months using my methodology, using my system. Andy has now done 5 acquisitions in 18 months. The first one doubled the size of his 10-year-old company. So for 10 years, he toiled to get his company up to a certain size, met me, did 1 deal. Now his company's twice the size. But it didn't take him another 10 years to get there. It just took him weeks. John has done 3 acquisitions. Actually, I need to change that. It's now 5. 5 acquisitions from administrators in the last year. Now, that's something we haven't touched on at all today, but the place to find ugly businesses is from businesses that have gone into administration. So insolvency practitioners have hundreds of ugly businesses that they need to sell. And the question is, why can't they sell them to you? Well, if you know what you're doing, there's no reason why they can't sell them to you. Here's Peter looking incredibly serious. He shouldn't be looking so serious because he actually bought a profitable business for £1. Sometimes people say, well, surely every pound deal is going to be an ugly business. No, this actually was a profitable business, but the way he structured it just required him to pay £1. Now, by the way, these videos, interviews, because that's what they are. These are screenshots from video interviews, were done before lockdown. So you can see it's nice quality there in the studio. Very, very nice quality. And here we are, lockdown time. This is Zoom. So Ray came on my May fast track training program. Since then, he's bought 2.9 million pounds of business, not a penny of his own money. I'm going to give you some detail around Ray in a moment. There's Darren. He's done 16 acquisitions in 16 weeks. Again, I'll give you some detail around that in a moment. So the reason I'm showing you these people is to show you that it's something that you can do. It's not just something that I can do. This isn't something that is reserved for a few people. This is something that a lot of people can do. Now, I told you right at the beginning of the webinar that this was very much the first step. This is the deciding webinar. Are you going to do this or are you not going to do it? Now, if you're not going to do it, that's fine. It's just not your cup of tea. Yeah, it's just something. Yeah, that's fine. Don't do it. But if it's something that you are going to do, then I want to tell you about the second step. The second step is this. What if I was your business buying mentor? What if I was the person who helped you do this? And if you'd like me to help you do this, then I would be pleased to help you doing this. Now, comes at a cost. I'll tell you in a moment. It comes at a cost. If I taught you what has taken me decades to work out by trial and expensive error, I have made so many mistakes. If I can show you the mistakes that I've made and show you how to avoid them, that in itself is worth every penny. And what if I did this training by video meeting? We have people from all over the world join this training, so you don't have to travel anywhere. No one really wants to do that at the moment. So why don't we do it via Zoom like we're doing right now, so you can be anywhere in the world?